all around the world, when professionals of a certain area get interviewed about the peak performances, what they have in their profession, they tend to describe those feelings in a very similar manner, no matter the certain profession. He could be an artist, he could be an engineer, or even a marketing person if they qualify as persons. But they describe the feelings in a similar manner no matter the culture. And those feelings usually include the sense of total immersion to the task at hand at their peak performance, the total concentration, the lowered self-consciousness, because there is no room in their consciousness for self-aware thoughts, no room for self-reflection. They lose the sense of time, they lose the sense of bodily functions when they experience this flow state of mind. This father of the flow theory, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, don't ask me to spell it, has been interviewing professionals around the world, and what he's found are that they all describe this in a similar manner, but they also say that it's incredibly joyful, not in the moment, but afterwards. They receive incredible amounts of joy from these experiences, which I hope we've all had. He also found out that there are some conditions that usually take place for the flow to be induced in the individual. Those include the skill level has to be in balance with the level of the challenges. If the skill level is too high and the challenge level too low, we tend to get more bored than to be in a flow state. And vice versa, we tend to feel anxiety because we cannot attend to the challenges that arise from the task, be it composing a musical piece, engineering a cruise ship, or bullshitting some person in a marketing meeting or something else. The challenges of the task have to be meaningful in the way that we have to have enough reason to fully immerse ourselves to the task at hand. We have to have motivation for the full concentration to happen. We have to have clear goals in the task so that it gives structure to the task. The goals have to be there to be seen for the flow to take place. We have to have a good feedback method to tell us whether we are doing a good job or not, whether we are succeeding in achieving those goals. But that's all what Csikszentmihalyi talks about in his TED Talk and in his books of flow. I'm here to talk about a different thing. It's called the group flow. And whereas the flow is the peak performance state of an individual, the group flow is something more vague, more interesting. It's the peak performance state of a given group that is in a team effort situation. So we want to move from this flow to the multiple flows. But that's exactly not everything. Since in Western individualistic culture, we tend to look at only the individuals and not see the bigger group agent emerging from those individuals. What this image is actually, it's made by a 6-year-old, yes, I know, but I'm not an artist. What this image is here to show is that group has more members than its human members. The relationships between those group members are also sort of members of the group. The whole constitution of the group is a member of the group that should be taken into account when we look at the group. And from this mishmash, from these fluid attributes of the group, a group agent, something similar to a mind, is born. We could actually, if we look at neural networks in the human brain, they give rise to our consciousness. Our consciousness emerges from these neural networks. If we only look at the neural networks, we might miss the consciousness. So we have to look at the high-level stuff to see what actually emerges from the little pieces when they are sewn together. And from these singular flows in a group, we want to look at the group flow, not the singular flow, not the solitary flow. We want to look at the group flow. How does the group flow affect? How do we induce it? How do we induce the peak performance in a group? And how do we make also group work happen in a flow state of the group agent as well as the individuals? Think of a good jazz ensemble. They all play their own instruments. Think of them jamming together in an improvisational setting. They all play their own instruments, yet they do it together. Much like we all have our own sort of cognitive instruments. Whereas the jazz player might be a drummer or a sax player, we might be artists, we might be analysts, we might be engineers, we might be marketing people or business people or that sort. We still have to have the same sort of skill level for us to understand each other and work cooperatively and collaboratively towards the common goal. We have to be in a similar skill level, just like the jazz ensemble. Even though playing different instruments, they have to have the same set of skills, the same skill level. We also have to have relevant knowledge of the other people. So basically we have to know which instrument each one is playing. We also have to have this sort of tacit knowledge of each other that makes us understand and speak the same language and sort of understand each other. Now, these are all conditions that we need to induce the group flow in the group agent, which can then emanate from the group agent into the individual persons, the individual human members of the group. Social feedback must happen on an effective level. Our brain can only consciously compute certain amounts of data at once. So if we fully concentrate on the task that we are given, we're fully doing our job in the group, we're fully immersing into the group effort that we're trying to do. If we start handling, there's two kinds of feedback. There's the task feedback, which comes from the task itself, and then there's social feedback that defines our position inside that group. And if we start consciously, or to be blunt, cognitively, think about our social position in the group, we lose some of the consciousness, some of the cognitive power that we could be using doing the task, and therefore no flow can happen since there's no full immersion to the task at hand. Therefore, social feedback must take place on an effective, on an emotional level. Now this requires and creates huge emotional bond with ourselves and the group agent and the other individuals. I speak of group agent as sort of a separate entity, even though it consists of the individual members of the group, just to make clear. Also, this creates the bond between the individual members and the group agent itself. Now what this requires is high rapport, that's spelled R-A-P-P-O-R-T. Now who's here heard of rapport? Who's a salesman? There's one salesman, two salespeople. Okay, no one else. Rapport is something that's between two or more people, or then it isn't. Well, salespeople are trying to establish rapport on a conscious level, but one of my friends actually does it on a subconscious level every time he goes to a Turkish restaurant in Finland or a Chinese restaurant. So what basically happens, he goes to the teller, a staff member, and starts speaking really bad Finnish to them, even though he's Finnish himself. And that can be very socially awkward. He can be offended by, oh, mulle tuli tommonen. It's not respectful. But what he's actually trying to be is not to be offensive, but rather to establish rapport verbally between them, some sort of common language, some sort of sensation of being in sync with the other person. Another good example of if you take the time, I actually challenge you to take the time to observe two best friends immersed in a conversation between the two of them. They're shutting the outside world out, and then observe them. Look at the way they look each other in the eye when they speak to each other. Look at the way they breathe in the same pattern. They might sit in the same pattern or stand in the same posture. They might use the same sort of vocabulary, speak the same pattern, and when the other one changes posture, the other one quickly follows. Now, that's something that's very observable. But what they're feeling inside at that moment is the sense of self extending, self getting suspended. The boundaries between self and the other become fuzzy, and they see the other person as merely an extension or a mirror of their self. Something of a common self is created between them. All the emotions they feel, everything that they want to say, is immediately communicated to the other person. They feel so in sync, and that's what they actually are. They are in sync. And that is where rapport is, and that's what the group flow requires for the social feedback to be handled on the emotional level. The friends are not aware of them mirroring the other person because they're fully concentrating on the conversation, but they're still doing it because they can on the emotional level. Now, when the group flow happens, the peak performance of the group, when this happens, usually the person feels the self suspended and the self extended to the other people, to the other individuals, and to you maybe, and to the group agent itself. They feel the self suspended and the self extended into the fuzzy common self. And that's when the emotional contagiousness happens. That's when the group flow emanates down from the group agent to the individual members. That's when the solitary flow states in the individual members become contagious. That's when all the joys, all the happiness or the sadness, the sorrows become so contagious that it's even more contagious than all the viruses on board, which you have to use all the soap to get rid of. It creates collective sense of purpose. The person, as the self gets extended, feels a collective sense of meaning, collective sense of purpose, belonging to something greater than the self as the self gets extended. And that is one of the defining feelings of the group flow state. Not in solitary flow. In studies, actually, group flow states are more enjoyable than the solitary flow states. So that's why we want this. We want these group flows, especially because we understand the virtues of teamwork. We want to induce the group flow in order to unlock the potential of the group, the full potential, and also to unlock this feeling of belonging and purpose in our lives. What people usually try to do after being in this group flow state is well described by religious rituals. Religious rituals usually start from these group flow states, and then the participants try to extend and establish the continuity of that ritual. Guys go into the summer cabin on the lakeside doing some stuff that they traditionally do there, which I'm not aware of. Those might also be attempts to institutionalize the stuff that started the group flow experience. Or it can be as common, well, not common, but as mundane, as close to us as Alton tracks and Alton waves. I personally know nothing of the Alton tracks, but still, looking at Alton waves, I have no doubt in my mind that the people who participated in Aalto on Tracks felt powerful group flow experiences of belonging, of the self-extending, the self-suspending to create the common self. In the workshops maybe, or maybe on the cross-dressing night in Mongolia, who knows, I've heard of it. But I have no doubt that what they try to do here is to establish the continuity of the same ritual, to induce the group flow in every one of you during this, in this boat or on shore, doing the workshops that we're doing. And through that, we can firstly unlock the potential of the group through satisfying these mentioned conditions. And what group flow does for us as individuals, it brings us together, it creates a feeling of being in sync, being in the groove with each other, being in the zone with each other. It creates meaning, purpose in our lives. It creates happy, joyful, enjoyable lives with lots of meaningful, important and personal relationships with other people, with other groups. And that is the beauty and the power of the group flow and the group flow experiences.